the difference between legibility and readability. They're both important, but there is a difference that you should understand. Legibility measures the ability to decipher something. That is, can you look at it and make sense of it? In typographic terms, legibility measures how easy or difficult it is to see the differences between one letter of a typeface and another. The most legible typefaces have individual character shapes which are clearly distinct from one another, and they usually have large X heights and large counterspaces. If you compare a serif typeface to a sans serif typeface, you can see that the serifs make it easier to see the difference between lowercase i's and lowercase l's. The serifs provide a little extra detail, and they help the reader along by indicating the horizontal flow of the line. Studies have shown that serif typefaces are slightly more legible than sans serif typefaces for lengthy reading because of the details provided by the serifs. That is why you almost never see a book typeset in a sans serif typeface. Lengthy reading is more comfortable when serifs help with legibility. Readability goes one step beyond legibility. Readability measures how much the reader wants to read the text. Another way of saying that is the text appealing to the reader? As a designer, you can increase readability by using various techniques to invite the reader into the text. For example, a page of text like this might be perfectly legible, but might not be appealing to the reader. We want to create some visual relief, places where the eye can focus or even rest. Even small visual gestures can invite the reader in. How can we make that text more inviting and thus more readable? Here are some basic options. Line breaks can help by adding some visual space. If you add some lead-in caps along with your line breaks, that's another step toward readability. Another option, find appropriate places to insert drop caps. These create some focal points and entry points for the reader. Try looking for interesting sentences that can be pulled out of the text and made larger. We call these pull quotes or callouts. Adding a bit of color can add extra appeal to the reader. These small changes all provide something we call entry points. Entry points are places where a reader can choose to enter the text and start reading. There are endless ways to create entry points in print or on the screen. Streaming and smartphones have made it easier to turn big stories into more digestible formats. Headlines, subheads, beginning body copy, captions, shifts in size, type style, color, each of these can provide a point of entry. Entry points can be created by boxing text, color bands, and reversing out text. Think about ways that the text can be broken up into more bite-sized chunks or divided into sections with their own headlines. Look at all the entry points in this single page. There are about 15 or so different places that I might choose to dip into the text. Adding color into selected type or other graphic elements, adding some white space, each of these steps adds to the readability of your project. So, just to recap, legibility measures whether the viewer can read the text, and readability measures how much the reader wants to read the text. And remember that you have the power to use your typographic skills to create easy entry points for your readers. In this video, I'm adding some important tips to the legibility factors for long-form reading. Legibility isn't a scientific formula. It's based on a series of factors and interdependent relationships. Smooth and easy reading is always the goal for setting text type. Legibility factors include type style, type size, and type space. The best type styles for ease of reading are serif typefaces. Serif type is slightly easier to read because the horizontal serifs lead the eye forward. Also, serifs provide details which help the eye differentiate between similar letters. For example, you can see the difference between the details of the serif typeface and the lack of details in the sans serif typeface. Here are just a few examples of highly legible text typefaces. They all have a larger X height, open counter spaces, and a medium weight. Medium weight works best. If a type style is heavy or has tight counter spaces, it makes it harder to read at length. If a type weight is too light on the page, the eye must work harder to read it. Good sizes for text type generally range between 8 to 10 point or occasionally 12 point, depending on the typeface, the intended audience, and the content. For example, children need a larger point size if they're learning to read, and larger sizes are better for older adults or anyone who has impaired vision. Good text type spacing is based on a series of proportional relationships. Letter spacing, kerning, is proportional to word spacing, is proportional to leading, is proportional to line length, including the number of characters per line, is proportional to the margins, in fact, all of the space around the text itself. I know that sounds complicated. It's part of my theory of typographic relativity. Remember, every typographic element exists in relation to every other typographic element. It's all about creating a harmonious whole. Leading affects legibility too. Text type should have enough leading or space between the lines so that the letters aren't touching, plus a bit more. If the spaces between the lines are too tight, it's harder for the viewer's eye to find the next line of type to continue reading. If there's too much space between lines, the eye has to work too hard to jump from one line to the next. Another legibility factor is the line length. If there are too many words per line, the eye has a long way to travel back in order to find the beginning of the next line. Too few words, and the eye has to switch lines frequently, which is tiring. A good rule of thumb is 52 to 70 characters per line. Remember that spaces and punctuation count as characters. Another rule of thumb is that the number of characters per line is 2.5 times the width of the line in picas. One extra legibility factor is contrast between the type and the background. High contrast makes for easiest reading. Black letters on a white background have the most contrast. That's the best for strong legibility and smooth reading. But when white type or light type is on a black or dark background, studies have shown that readers experience a slightly disturbing sparkle effect, so it's not ideal for extended reading. Also, lightening or colorizing the text or darkening or colorizing the background makes it harder to distinguish the letter forms. Any texture or image behind the type will also impair its legibility. Keep all of these factors in mind when you're designing with type. For an even deeper dive into maximizing legibility for text and display type, I recommend that you watch my course, Foundations of Typography, Color, Contrast, and Scale. Remember, your goal is to make your reader's journey as easy on the eye as possible so that reading can be accomplished with a minimum of effort. We're surrounded by type all the time. So, how does type stand out in a busy environment? One way is by using hierarchy. Hierarchy is the visual organization of text. Hierarchy is the way type is presented in order to reach out to the viewer and then to indicate levels of importance of the information. Your local supermarket has thousands of products, and each one is packaged to attract you. So, supermarket packaging is a great place to examine how hierarchy works. Products in the same category use branding and hierarchy to compete for your attention, and they send plenty of subtle and not-so-subtle messages to influence your buying decisions. Let's look at a few examples that show how well some competing packages communicate their individual personalities and their brands. Each package design creates levels of typographic hierarchy by using changes in type style, size, weight, color, position, and orientation. Those typographic techniques are the designer's tools. The logos are the first thing the shopper sees. Kettle Chips has a logo that works to send a message that these are healthier chips. The roughness of the typography suggests that the chips are less highly processed. The logo's irregular baseline and the woody texture also suggest that the chips are more natural. The logo stands out because of its size, its prominent position at the top, and because the big swoosh of the K over the T creates action. Pop chips, on the other hand, have a slick, fun, modern look. The O's of the logo are popping out, just like the name. The I is implied by the space between the H and the P, and the big dot over the imaginary I. The word pop is bigger. It's literally popping. It's a modern, minimalist approach to snack chips. The typographic hierarchy on the package is based on the smaller size of the secondary text, which is all natural, and the variety of pop chips. The descriptions are all the way at the bottom, smaller and therefore less important. Here's another good example of two companies selling the same product in entirely different ways. Tire Tread Licorice takes a typographically aggressive approach. The name of the product, the type style of the product, and the actual product all send the same strong message. On the other hand, Newman's Own Licorice takes a calm approach, using traditional elements and an old-fashioned type style. Hierarchy is indicated by size order. The word licorice is the most important, then the image, then the other descriptive information, black licorice, twists made with organic sugar. When a new product has to compete against a well-established brand like Hellmann's, it has to work extra hard to differentiate itself. This vegan mayo uses customized, unique, bold brush lettering to effectively communicate how it is different even before you read the words vegan mayo. We could analyze every product category in the supermarket, but I hope these few examples will give you something to think about. Next time you go to your supermarket, work on developing your typographic eye by analyzing the packaging that you see. All of these packages, in their own way, strive to stand out from the competition and to define themselves by appealing to a different demographic through their use of typography and design. To recap, hierarchy is the visual organization of text. Show the reader what to read first, second, third, and so on. Creating hierarchy is simple. Size and weight matter most. Color, contrast, and position in the composition all play a role in creating sensible hierarchy. You can use these techniques to make your design stand out. For even more tips on typographic hierarchy, check out my short LinkedIn learning course on hierarchy and navigation. Creating visual prominence and setting priorities for the viewer is something you can do.